Deborah, you've had a very senior position within Stockland for the last few years. What does urban design mean to a large listed developer like Stockland?
Stockland is a large listed developer. We obviously, our stakeholders or our people who own the company, there's tens of thousands of them. We're a publicly listed company. We have an obligation, a little bit like governments do, to lead and deliver best practice and good investment in the long term for our shareholders. And for not only our shareholders, the people who interact with our projects and the places that we create. So urban design is a fundamental component of that. The design of communities, we are involved in, as you're aware, in Queensland, some very large communities, 3,000 hectare sites in Caloundra South, will be towns for the future. In 20 years' time, there will be a town of Caloundra South, which is at the moment is pine plantation. It's absolutely critical that the quality of that place is international best practice. And so that's what we are expected and we aim to achieve. And urban design is a key component of that process. Understanding how to make places, urban places, which are high quality, desirable places to be, with not necessarily exclusive, with a diverse community, diverse opportunities, affordable housing, as well as housing for people who may be in a different socio-economic group. But we want healthy, prosperous communities, which are places that people want to stay and want to live.
Does urban design cost more from Stockland's perspective, do you think?
Does urban design cost more is a very interesting question. I think another question which needs to be asked at the same time is, what's the cost of bad urban design? So is there a cost for good urban design? Yes, there's a cost for all types of design. The cost of bad urban design is that you probably develop a place where people don't want to be, won't want to buy, over the longer term is going to be unsustainable. You're likely to have some social and problems if it's not a desirable place to be and spend your time. There is a serious cost associated with that, not just for the initial developer, but for the long-term reputation and a lot of other consequential aspects. So urban design does cost time, it does cost effort, and it does cost money, but it's absolutely an essential component of urban development. It's a little bit like asking, does engineering cost more? Yes, it does cost more, but without engineering we probably wouldn't be withstanding hurricanes and cyclones. So the question is probably, do we get value out of the money which has been invested in that process? And the answer is absolutely yes.
What would you say then to a regional developer, that might be sort of Toowoomba or Bathurst or Bendigo or something like that, about urban design and perhaps kind of reviewing how they deliver housing?
Urban design, even at a smaller scale doesn't necessarily make urban design more or less valuable or more or less important. There are examples where projects have been developed without adequate consideration of urban design, and the outcome for a community, a regional community, can be very detrimental, because instead of building on its local characteristics and its local amenity, its local opportunities, they're actually foregone in the development of a scheme, and later on that area in which it's foregone can actually undermine the quality and the characteristics and the value that was there initially. So it's a long-term investment. It's a long-term investment that will head you in the right direction over a period of 10, 15, 20 years. And to build short-term, lesser quality projects now, it might be okay for the first couple of years, but then you'll start to see the negative ramifications. So you're better off probably extend your horizon. We're not here just for a couple of years, we're here for the long haul.
There are quite a few developers in the US call themselves town founders now. They're there to make money, but there's also this notion of kind of leaving a legacy and leaving something behind. Is that consistent with what you're saying, do you think?
Absolutely, yes. I think, and the term town founder is a little bit of a gimmick. For the time being that's popular, but at some other time the term will change. Fundamentally, I think in order to drive a major project or a major initiative that urban design is, It does require long-term commitment over a series of steps. And I can give a couple of examples where you can see how important that is. One of them is the City of Melbourne and the grids. Now, Rob Adams is a highly skilled and experienced urban designer of his own right. But one of the key attributes of the success of the urban design program in the City of Melbourne has been Rob's ongoing involvement and passion and commitment to delivering not just over a couple of years, but over 20 years. So that program has evolved and has always moved towards the vision that was originally embedded in the early study, which was Grids and Greenery, I think the original vision was called, and they continued over a long time in a similar direction, with some flexibility, but they didn't lose sight of that. Similarly, the University of New South Wales Master Plan, it was a project I worked on with David Chesterman back in the late 1980s, and the campus was quite different than it was today. And whilst we did an urban design strategy, which involved identifying circulation networks, potential building sites, design of public places and spaces, we also ensured that there was a steering group. It wasn't only us, but actually at the time the Vice-Chancellor chaired the steering group, and that steering group stayed in place for a couple of decades and oversaw all of the development projects on the campus and ensured that in taking the projects forward, each individual building contributed to the overall urban design master plan. And that was absolutely critical to achieving the goals. If that had changed every few years and a new consultant came on board and said, well, that was their idea, now I've got a new idea, we're going to head direction left for the first 3 years, then Joe Bloggs changes, and now we're suddenly going to do an about turn and go turn right, and then swapping and changing every 5 years doesn't help you achieve, in fact, you go nowhere. In fact, it does require, be that a town founder or certainly a champion for a project or for a place. You can call them place managers, you can call them all sorts of things, but it's about how do you maintain the long-term vision and work with people to achieve it, as opposed to a lot of people in the past, or sometimes consultants in the past, have worked to undermine what's in effect a very strong and convincing direction for very, not particularly great advantage.
I remember an architect telling me once that architects love to master plan, but they don't like working within a master plan.
There is some truth in that. But I must say that certainly at the University of New South Wales, one of the strengths of the steering group was that they had a very clear master plan, and that was the brief. And similarly at the City of Melbourne, there is a brief and there are some expectations, and the architects can still do fabulous work. It doesn't have to actually suddenly redesign the city.